This is Family Time 189. We're back to our look at social awareness. We're really looking at appreciating diversity, respecting others, and we're going to talk about the idea of bias this week. We all have certain biases, and a lot of our biases aren't overly significant, but we have to understand that there are sort of those invisible things, some things that are sometimes illogical that pull us towards one thing or another, that give us just a certain preference or a certain sort of feeling towards something. And I want to discuss a few different types of bias. A lot of times we think of bias and we think of implicit prejudices. And those would be all like your negative isms, racism, sexism, ageism. Those are certainly strong examples of biases. And they do exist. And it's a good example of the kind of invisible forces that lead all of us to have biases. Now, someone that maybe has a really strong feeling toward a particular group of people, that feeling probably exists for a number of reasons, probably because of the environment in which they were raised and things they were exposed to. And often those really negative feelings, those things like racism and sexism and things like that, those often exist because of a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. It's being presented with one thought process and not taking the time and effort to examine the other side, to get to know someone who might represent another group. And that's a good example of kind of how most biases exist. A big bias that impacts our world today is confirmation bias. What confirmation bias is, we see it all the time now in the political landscape especially, and really in a lot of different phases of our life, but you can see it a lot in politics, where if you follow a certain political party, for instance, it's very easy in our world today to only seek out and find information, news outlets, social media, influencers who are only espousing the things we already believe, right? So we create this echo chamber where it's, if I want to believe a certain thing, I can find all sorts of other people who are backing up my ideas, who are saying the same thing and are feeding the things that I already believe. That becomes dangerous at a point because we don't have to examine the other side. We can fall into this trap of like, look, I found all of these other people, all of this other information that supports what I'm already saying. And it feels good to be right. We like to be right. And we like to make some order out of this messy world. So it becomes very easy to say, look, see, this is the problem. This is why this exists. And we like things to be black and white. It's easier. Like, this is why things are bad. This is the problem. And here's the clear solution. The trouble is most things don't really exist that way. We talk about it in class, particularly in character and leadership class. We talk about why two opposing viewpoints might exist. And we find, if we're willing to examine it, that two opposing viewpoints on a topic typically exist to fulfill the same types of human needs, right? We all have human needs, that sense of belonging and safety and all these sorts of things, and we're all trying to fill those needs. And we can approach them from different angles. If we can take a step back and examine biases that exist, we can say, okay, even if I disagree, I understand how you might come to this conclusion by trying to fulfill your human needs in the same way that I am. And then we can have a discourse, right? Then we can have an argument, which is different than a fight. A lot of what is presented to us in the world today is fighting, where it's just people yelling their own opinions at each other and not having an argument. Argument has a negative connotation, but you have an argument if you write a paper, if you give a speech, a persuasive speech, right? You're formulating and supporting an argument. That's what an argument is. The Greeks were very clear about defining that, right? That an argument had to have certain things in there, have emotional and logical and character-driven points. And we lose that sometimes. So it's important to examine our biases. There's a lot of different biases that exist. We'll discuss more types of biases in class. In-group bias is another one where it's like, if you go to St. Ansgar, we maybe feel a specific way, a certain way about certain other schools, or even little things. Like, because of our school colors, you might feel a certain way about a certain other color. I mean, biases can go that deep. And a lot of them aren't overly significant, but some really can be. And it's important for us to consider the biases we have in our lives and how they impact our thoughts and our behaviors. Only then can we transform a bias into a belief if we're willing to examine the other side. Then we really decide what we believe about a topic instead of just being guided by a bias. And as always, I don't need you to think and feel how I think and feel. In fact, I don't want that. We need variety of thoughts and feelings and beliefs. But I want you to think, and I want you to feel, and I want you to believe things. And part of that is examining what biases you might have, that we all might have. Until next time, much love.